Hey, welcome back, everybody. Live on Facebook again for another episode of the Up North Journal podcast tonight. And we got our guests sitting in the wings waiting patiently.
Yes.
To talk some good stuff about deer hunting and some things that might get under your collar a little bit.
Right? Let's do some sharing.
Give us just a few minutes here and we'll get ready to rock and roll tonight, folks. Danny, did you have a good weekend?
I did. Did some stuff around the house. But yeah, it was a good weekend.
Good deal. Good deal.
I see you were out playing with the Rambo bike.
Yeah, I actually got it out on the ice and did a little running around with it on the ice. Probably won't get a chance to talk about that too much tonight. But
yeah, I don't think we're going to get too much in tonight.
So,
but that's all right.
It is all right. It's going to be a good show tonight. So.
Yes, it is.
All right, I got my shears done. You let me know when you're ready.
Just give me a few seconds here.
We will.
What's today's date?
Today is the
10th.
10th, yes, sir.
All right.
It's finally warming up here in Michigan. The ice is starting to slowly melt here on the lakes. I was out yesterday with the bike on doing a little running around one of the local lakes with the ice shanty, shooting some video. And the snow in the woods is starting to slowly melt away as well. So it's not going to be long. It's supposed to be 60 here in Michigan this week. It's going to be awesome. And as our guest in Florida probably thinks 60, that's cold.
I know, right?
Compared to down there right now, I tell you. But no, it's been a good week here. Finally breaking the weather, breaking the winter doldrums. So let's see who we got on tonight already. And guys and gals, make sure you get questions in if you got them going along the way. Dan Anderson from Wisconsin, Charles Byram from Iowa is online already. I have a feeling those two guys will have some questions.
Probably. Give me 2 more shares here.
All right. Well, once you get ready to roll here, let me know, and I'm going to go ahead and start.
All right.
Close?
Almost. 1 more to go.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal podcast, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in a warm cabin tonight with Dan DeFall, who is finishing up the shares, and hopefully our guest is able to find that feed on our page and has shared it as well. So we got 9 people in ready, so they're starting to pop in quickly. But I'm just going to go ahead. Let's just jump right into this. There's been a lot of talk here in the last year on CWD, and Dan, last night you had the opportunity online to talk with Gregory, and actually we've got him on the show tonight. So Jay, are you still there with us? Can you hear us?
I'm here.
Hey, welcome to the show. Appreciate you on short notice getting on with us and talking about CWD tonight.
I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Oh, you know what? I felt kind of bad because you were on a boat. You told me after we got into our conversation. I'm like, oh, he's on a boat in Florida, and I'm like, oh.
Well, we're going to need a boat here soon. Won't be quite as warm as Florida, but hopefully we'll be on a boat here soon. So Jay, you're down in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. I thought you were a northern guy here in the Midwest.
I am. I live in Iowa, but I guess maybe I've just gotten smarter over the years. Whenever it gets really cold and nasty, I'm finally starting to. I think I'm getting old enough. My bones need warm air. So I've been down here this winter, and I'm actually looking forward to going back. It won't be long. Of course, turkey season right around the corner, and we're going to start. We'll start up. We're actually going to start here in Florida. Wyatt's coming down to join me this week, and Whitley, and we're going to shoot some Osceola birds, we hope, and then it'll be back up north and start on turkey season up there, and hopefully the snow will melt. And maybe we can find some sheds.
That sounds like a plan. That sounds like a good plan to me.
Well, okay, so when you come back, bring the warm, send it north.
Well, I hope to be in Indiana this coming weekend working on some property down there. And then after that, we're going to turn our attention right into turkeys up here hunting easterns in Michigan. But, the reason we got you on tonight, everybody knows you're on Facebook quite a bit, and you're very outspoken, and thank you very much for being so on CWD and fighting the fight for us hunters, and getting that information out. So, speaking on that, now you hunt in Minnesota, am I right?
I do not, but I have some staff people, and I know several people from Minnesota. So
okay.
and it's obviously not that far from me. And it's funny how, deer hunters everywhere, we're all like family. So you talk to people from all over the place, whether it be, Illinois, Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, New York, wherever. So I kind of hear it from about everyone.
Right. Well, I remember here recently, I would say probably in the last 6 months or so, I seen a post, it was probably right before Christmas actually, where Minnesota was coming out with their new action plan, and you were very outspoken about that. You talk a little bit about what they're trying to do?
Well, what they had done was they had, in this hot zone that they had basically, they had made it to where they had taken away some of the regulations. They'd let you use a rifle. This was a special landowner hunt, I guess is what they call it. But it basically, anybody from anywhere could come to Minnesota. There was no cost for tags. Bring your rifle, which you can't even hunt with a rifle during the gun season, from what I understand in these areas. And you could shoot, as long as you could get permission from a landowner, you could go in there and kill as many deer, bucks, does, whatever as you want to. And it just seemed, and I felt bad for the landowners in that part of the country. I mean, how would you like to, have your neighbor who maybe is, maybe they have no ill intentions at all, but just imagine, an old farmer couple sitting at their kitchen drinking coffee, and the door knocks and it's a DNR, and they come in there with their computer, and they give them their 5-minute assertion about how the zombie deer apocalypse is about to happen, and we need to sign you up for, to come in here and bait pile your ground and kill all your deer, because we don't want, Fifi catching it out there in the front yard and your cattle and everything else. And, I mean, these are just things that could be going on in this couple's head sitting there. And so it's no surprise that the general public is being scared to death enough when they really aren't educated about it and they don't know. And I feel like that's what's happening, is they're getting preyed on. And unfortunately, let's say the neighbor next to him, his whole family's hunted for 100 years, and it's a farm that's been in the family forever, and they try and manage their farm, and they have their groups up, and it's a big part of their life and a part of their heritage. And the next thing you know, there's guys from all over the country driving in and sitting on this guy's property and just shooting every deer. And it's sickening to me, and it's unfortunate that it's something that's truly happening. And then, from what I understand, is once that is over with, then they're bringing in the sharpshooters once they have this special hunt, which is now over. But from what I understand now, they're bringing in sharpshooters the month of March to devastate whatever wasn't already killed. So, I don't know. It's a sad situation.
All in the hopes to eradicate it by wiping them out.
Yeah, we're going to save the deer by killing the deer.
And keep in mind that they're selling this, that we're going to wipe out these deer, we're going to kill all these deer, when there's not one documented case where it has worked to do this, to actually get rid of CWD. And then the question comes up, well, do you really need to get rid of CWD? There's not even been one documented case of a deer ever dying of CWD. And yet, they're banking on the what ifs and what could happen, and, making people think that it's possible that it could jump to humans. I love the wording that's usually used is that this is a 100% fatal. If a deer gets it, they want you to believe it's 100% fatal, when they have no proof of that. I mean, that's just not a true statement. That's a hypothesis that, if a deer gets it, but that's just not true.
I've got about 50 questions that just popped in my head off of that statement.
And it's funny that he mentioned that about a statement.
Right.
I was told, a friend of mine that called me today about matter of fact, Jay, you were actually talked about an article without you knowing about it from a publication, and it said you're a naysayer with Ted Nugent, and they didn't even kind of let you know that they were going to talk about you about it. But it's like one of those things. It's like they just throw this out there as fact.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is, it's almost like it's a blueprint, because I've had several conversations, most of them have been online, with biologists and game officials, and every time you get in a conversation with them, it's like they're reading from a brochure. I don't even need to talk to them. I can ask the question and then I can answer it the way they're going to answer it, because I've heard the same answers over and over so many times, and they don't really answer anything. All they do is just basically read a brochure. And unfortunately, it would appear that all these states are starting to follow the same quote unquote brochure or ways of doing things, and it's just jumping from one state to the next. And the only common denominator is that there is a lot of money that is being transpired. I'll see if I can pull it up here for you. I'll read you real quick a piece that I just posted. The Chronic Wasting Disease Management Act will authorize $35 million in funding for state and tribal wildlife agencies to take action in response to CWD. It was authorized $25 million in funding for practical research to understand and respond to the disease. That's in Montana. Okay, so we're going to spend all of that, and I can, from what I understand, the funding is not to find a way to get, like Missouri used as an example. They've spent $10 million on testing and eradication. They're not doing anything to try and figure out what they can actually do to help it. All they're doing is just wiping out deer. I believe the number is somewhere around, they've killed 30,000 deer this year already, and people need to understand that these prevalence rates are, of the deer that they kill, 0.1% of the deer have CWD. And they can't even prove that the deer are dying from CWD. Now, just let that bounce around in your head for a minute. 0.1%, and we're going to spend $10 million. Okay, now the next question I always ask these agencies is, who's funding this? Where are you getting the money? They aren't going to tell you that. They don't want to answer that question. Though the first thing they always tell me is, you're not a biologist, and I'm not, and you don't know what you're talking about, and maybe I don't. But what I do know is that 2 and 2 does not equal 7. And when you tell me that 0.1% of deer have CWD, yet you're going to go in and you're going to wipe out areas in the hot zone, and you're going to kill these deer, and you're going to get all this money, this federal funding or wherever it's coming from, with no end game, that makes no sense to me. And that should not make any sense to anybody. And that's why I am so passionate about it, and why I want people to stand up, and I want them to ask questions. I want them to fight it. And it works, because I did see in Pennsylvania, there was a group there that went way above and beyond. And I think the fellow's name was Matt Johnson. He had contacted me. I actually did an interview with one of the TV stations up there, and they were just asking questions. As it turns out, there was so much publicity about it that a state representative named, and the only reason I remember this because his last name is the same as mine, I think his name was Jim Gregory, got involved, a Republican, and he put a stop to it. And so, unfortunately, what ended up happening, they stopped the coal in that area, but they just moved to another area, and I think they started again from what I've heard. But it can, people do need to ask questions and to look at this thing, because it just stinks. I don't know how else to put it. It just stinks.
Well, that's exactly what you said. That ask them one question. What's your end game? Explain the end game, and they can never come up with it.
There's no answer for that. There's no answer for where the money comes from. There's no answer for how they're going to plan on stopping it. Is it just to stop it, or like you said, Jay, is there research going on to try to figure out what's going on, how it's being transmitted? But the other question I've got for you is, we talk about the pamphlet that they hand out. There's misinformation all across the board, and sometimes even us hunters give out misinformation. We get, it's an emotional topic. But do you think, is it more of the game agencies, or do you think it's more of maybe even the media that has a hand in the misinformation? Like the zombie deer that just come out here in the last couple of weeks. My own daughter, who's in her 20s, she asked me, "Dad, is this real?" And I'm like, come on, you know better than that. But where do you think that misinformation is coming from?
This would just be my opinion. But I think that, well, first of all, how many agencies have you seen that have come out against the quote unquote phrase of zombie deer disease? How many agencies have denounced that? And it went on whenever you see these news feeds come up on your Facebook of ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CNN, all of them, and they put these articles out there. I've never seen an agency come out and say, no, wait a second, let's not blow this out of proportion. It's not a zombie apocalypse. You don't ever hear them talk about that. So I have to believe that they're probably happy, would be my guess, that's the term that's been coined on this. The first time that zombie deer, from what I've been told, the first time that quotation's ever been used called zombie deer was actually done by PETA, by an anti-hunting group. That was used years ago. That was the first time that was ever used, and it's ironic that that's coming back now and getting used. So I did want to touch on one other thing, though. You said, that nobody's really spending money on trying to find out about it. There is research out there that's being privately done, and just to let your viewers know this, there's two genotypes in these deer. Now, and I'm not a biologist, so I'm just passing along information, but it's very interesting. There is two genotypes, and one of them is actually it helps deer to actually fight. It makes them CWD resistant. So there is a genotype of deer out there. They relate this back to a lot of the scrapies and sheep back in the day whenever all this started, which, if you have any, I would love for everyone on here to go to my Facebook, and I just shared it on the Wild Outdoors Facebook. It is a piece that Keith Warren did on CWD, and it's about facts. And it is, I just watched it a little while ago again, just to watch it, to listen to it again. And there's so much good information there and so many questions, and it just gives you the facts about CWD, where it come from, where it started, and it kind of dispels some of the myths just by the common sense that is made. And I wholeheartedly want to thank Keith for taking the time to do that. There are so few of us in this industry that will even talk about this, which just absolutely blows my mind. I mean, you've got so many big names in this industry. There's 100 TV shows out there, 100 plus. Why everyone is not using their platform to at least have their viewers back, and all these people that follow them and support them and have for years and years and years. Why not use your platform to at least ask questions? And you know what? If you totally disagree with me and you think CWD is the next, and it's going to wipe our deer out, that's fine, but at least stand up and say something, and at least get the conversation out there. So I applaud the people like Ted Nugent and Keith Warren, Greg Miller, and I'm sure there's some others that have, Tim Wells has stepped up. Some of these people that have stepped up and said something and actually used their platform to talk about it, I applaud you, but there are so many more of you, and you know who you are. There's some way bigger names out there than I am that really need to I feel like, come on, we need your help.
Absolutely. And and we've been talking about it here for, I don't know, Danny, the last couple of years?
Yeah, it bubbles up every month for us.
Yeah, it just keeps coming back. But I tell you what, we're bumping up here on our first break. So let's take our first break. We come back. We'll continue the conversation. Maybe we'll get a few questions here from some of the people who are watching. So we're going to step outside and we'll be right back after this. Okay, guys and gals, if you got questions, get them in.
Any questions, get them in. Let's see. Yep, you're right, Jay. We got some confirmation that's what happened in Pennsylvania. It sounds like they just moved to a different area. So, comment here: the Michigan DNR is grasping at straws and money grab. Imagine that. CWD's in the ground, killing all the darn deer. Is not going to work. Oh yeah, it's a very passionate subject.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, we're ready. Here we go. Stand by in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. Second segment of the show. Still sitting here talking with Jay Gregory down in Florida, talking about CWD. Something that we're very passionate about is our white-tailed deer. I mean, really all critters, but I mean, this one really hits home for a lot of people. And Jay, in the first segment there, we're talking a little bit about action plans and things like that in the end game. I was recently down in Indiana at the Deer and Turkey Waterfowl Expo, and had an opportunity to sit in with 4 guys who were part of a roundtable. And they told me that Indiana is proposing their action plan to take right after the state of Michigan. Are you familiar with what Michigan's kind of done here in their action plan?
Refresh me. I'm guessing I have a pretty good idea.
Pretty much the same as all the other states. Basically, you get a hot zone, you quarantine it, you wrap it around with a management zone, and you go in and you start taking deer and having testing done, but they're going in and they're issuing a lot of tags for those areas. Basically the same thing. It's to take the deer numbers down quickly and have them tested. You know, state of Michigan, we tested what, Dan, 30,000 deer this year?
30,000, yeah.
30,000 deer from hunters, and we come back with 62 positives. Now that equals 0.01 or 0.02%, just like you said. So 62 cases. Now, majority of those, 45 came out of one county. My question would be, well, if that's their plan, why are they not targeting that county a little heavier and doing more testing? But actually, it was one of the least tested counties. So,
you know what's amazing to me is that like a state like Indiana will say, well, we're going to do the same thing as Michigan. Okay, where has that formula that they're going to institute ever worked?
Right.
So why would you copy it?
And so the kind of basically that's what we're hearing is that, you know, the formulas are being copied state by state by state, and like you said, wait a second, the formula isn't working.
Right.
So what it makes a conspiracy theorist think is that if this way that Michigan has done it and Minnesota has done it and now Missouri is doing it, there must be a formula there perhaps to get federal funding. And as long as you do it by this blueprint, you'll get federal funding in order to, quote unquote, test and fight the CWD. So is that why they're only using a certain formula and game plan in order to do this?
Kind of an interesting subject now, isn't it? You know, you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. Is you follow the money train, and what better way to supply your money coffers is to have government money.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, and the other thing is we're losing hunters, you know, hunter retention. So people aren't buying as many tags, and that directly funds, at least our state, DNR. And how do they combat that? I think part of it is to get this money coming in to supposedly combat CWD. You know, so I don't know. I don't know what the answer. We got something here though from Tom Witt. He says, Jimmy Newman is waiting on USDA approval. They are going to put 6 of each genotype in CWD positive preserves and check the resistance. So that's going back to what you were talking about, the different genotypes.
Right, yeah, and that makes more sense. I mean, at least the thing is, okay, if there's a genotype out there that is resistant to CWD, well, does it not make sense to do more testing over a period of time from hunters that have killed deer, because they can test the genotypes by getting samples of meat? It just doesn't seem like it makes any sense. If you go out there and kill, like with Missouri killing 30,000 deer, how do you know you just didn't kill 30,000 deer that had the right genotype, that as they breed? I've said all along, I think Mother Nature always takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. Well, basically this whole genotype theory kind of supports my position. It seems as though Mother Nature will take care of itself. And I'll give you an example that makes me really think about this. Every state deals with everything differently. Okay, South Dakota had and you can watch this on that piece I was telling you about that's on my Facebook, but they had, I can't remember exactly how many they started with, but they had they put elk into a pinned area. And their elk, they ended up testing them. They had a pretty darn high prevalence, like 30% prevalence of this elk herd had CWD in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. They didn't do anything with it. The problem was the herd kept growing, kept getting so strong that they ended up talked the, I can't remember the name of the forest that was next to it. Mm-hmm. They ended up opening gates and pushing elk. They had so many elk in this enclosure that were CWD positive that weren't dying from CWD, yet their prevalence was so high. They ended up using helicopters and pushing them into the other area. And when the commissions over there were asked about it, they were like, we just don't think CWD is a problem. We've seen it in this enclosure, and our elk herd has grown to such high numbers, and they're so healthy, we just kicked them out into the wild. They opened them up and put them into a state park. So that right there tells me somebody is seeing something different. And that to me is what I think. I think if they just leave everything alone, and I know they don't want to hear me say that, but I think if they just leave everything alone, it'll take care of itself. I don't see any big die-off. These deer have had this since 1967. That was the first case in a pen, in an enclosure in Colorado. And then from there it spread, and of course we all know what happened in Wisconsin. But if this was the deer, the zombie deer apocalypse that everyone claims it's going to be, there's millions of hunters out there that walk around in the woods all the time. Lots of landowners that manage their ground. There's video. We all got cameras. Everybody's got a video camera nowadays. Okay? Where are all these dead deer? I can tell you that in 2012, on my 800-acre farm, I couldn't walk out the back door in the summertime, and you almost had to have a handkerchief over your face with cologne on it because it stunk so bad, because we had EHD. And those deer, it wiped us out.
Right.
And okay, that was EHD. I've never, I find a few deer here and there, but they die of natural causes. They die of EHD every year in certain pockets. Where are all these dead deer at? I mean, it's just like, do they think we're that dumb? I mean, and 0.1% of deer got CWD, and we're just going to go into an area like Indiana's talking about and do what Michigan's doing because that's a great way to. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. And the way
7 equals 7. Period.
The way you said it exactly about EHD, you know what? You're right. You get hit hard, but Mother Nature knows what happened, and Dr. Kroll even mentioned this about Mother Nature will respond and have to do what she has to do to bring the deer population back.
Right. Going back to kind of what you talked about there with the elk in the pen, the farming industry, or the cervid farming industry, has really taken a heavy blow in this whole discussion.
Oh yeah,
they're beat up.
Thing, and they're really the ones that they're taking the beating on this. And in my opinion, it's not deservedly so either.
Well, do you think that according to what you were saying there about the elk, that maybe we need to look to them, because we know they do a lot of genetic testing for obvious reasons, and they're probably the guys in the forefront of leading some of this stuff. Maybe they've got the answers.
The money, you think about it. These people rely. That's their money train. Is their deer. They take better care of their deer than anybody does. Okay, they're going to be the last people. I'll give you another example of how states deal with it differently. There was a high fence operation for whitetails in southern Iowa. And 2 years ago, they had a positive CWD come up inside that enclosure. The state of Iowa came in and completely wiped out that deer. They killed 230 deer. And they show, and this is all on that deal that's on my Facebook. Wiped every deer in that pen out, and they put a quarantine on that place for 5 years with no retribution. They just wiped them out. And I don't know, because I didn't see what the number of other deer were that had CWD, but to me that's just a huge waste. I mean, that just makes no sense. And they're wanting to be able to do that to private landowners. There's groups out there. I mean, there's actually been legislation, from what I understand, where they want to make it to where if they find CWD in your area, they can actually come in, don't even have to get permission from you. Right now they do, but they like to not have to get permission and just come in and wipe them out. And I've always said all along, all these, you think this isn't coming to you, you think it isn't going to affect you. Well, I happen to own a farm in the hot zone of Missouri. Well, what if the DNR gets permission from my neighbor, who maybe isn't a big deer hunter, doesn't care, had that representation when they came in, sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and scared them to death? Next thing I know, there's a huge corn pile with snow on the ground, with snipers sitting out there with night vision, shooting every deer that jumps the fence to eat in their corn pile, just wiping my deer out too. I know that sounds far-fetched, but I get messages from people all the time that this is actually happening to them as we speak.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the fact that they're baiting to get the deer to jump the fence. That's one of the things they tell us not to do, is to bait, because that helps spread disease. So they're in turn doing.
So many fallacies out there about that. They want, they banned deer urine in some states to hunt with, and we all know when you buy a bottle of deer urine, it's usually a 1 ounce or a 2 ounce bottle. Mm-hmm. They say it would take 33,000 gallons of urine deposited in one spot in order for there to be enough prions there for you to detect CWD.
Absolutely.
And then this whole baiting thing, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I just read something about Michigan today where they're actually issuing what is it? They're issuing
supplemental feed up in the UP.
Well, isn't that going to spread CWD? No, I don't. But so I don't know. It seems like it kind of changes with whatever the agenda is. It seems that way.
Well, that's kind of what happened here in the UP when they detected it. Danny, that's right up where you hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Very close, and they found. Did they not find? Was it one or two?
They found one deer 4 miles from the Wisconsin border.
Okay. That
tested positive for CWD. So instead of doing what they typically do down here in the lower, they just went with the migration sector of the deer, and they went basically north to south, up and down.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
But they're still allowing baiting in the UP.
UP.
I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
Based on the whole feeding thing, and that's become a big issue. The state of Kansas should be a horrible deer hunting state. The state of Texas should be laced with CWD and a horrible place to kill a good deer. Both of those states allow baiting. I know there's other ones. Those are just two that I can think of off the top of my head. You don't hear a whole lot about CWD in Kansas right now, and they border the state where this all started. And they feed deer, and you can put minerals out. You can do all of it there. Missouri banned minerals because they thought that deer coming to a salt lick would, their reasoning was that it would spread CWD. Well, what are they going to do about licking branches and scrapes? And, deer are out there 365 days a year. Anyone who deer hunts know that they use social scrapes and social licking branches all year long. It isn't just during the rut. They're out there in a field. With the weather we've had this winter, if a farmer didn't get his beans out and left, or somebody had a food plot stand there and you got 200 deer a night eating in there, you think they aren't going to be licking on each other and all over each other? I mean, some of the stuff just seems ridiculous. The ways that they're trying to implement them, not catching the zombie disease.
Exactly, and that's the thing. And you know what? Let's continue this after we're getting close to another break. So let's get to another break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about this with Jay Gregory.
All right, we're gonna step outside. We'll be right back after this. All right. Any questions, guys? Man, there's a lot of comments coming in right now.
I can't read them this fast.
They're coming in so fast it's hard to keep up with them all. So,
but you're right, and it's amazing, and you're probably one of the most outspoken guys that I've seen on Facebook that comes across my feed, and it's just exactly. It's like, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, because I think you got something really good that you said about these other so-called people in the industry need to start talking up, who have the platform such as yourself. And can you guys hear me?
Yep. We're still live.
In some ways I want to call them out by name, but I just don't know that it's my place to do that. But where are the Lukowskis and the Drurys and the Waddells and Realtree? And what about all the companies like Cabela's and Bass Pro and Shields and Dick's? And where are all these companies? And Yeti. Mm-hmm. I mean, these companies have preyed off of this outdoor industry forever and made millions and millions and millions of dollars, yet they're not going to stand up for this and try and are they that worried about pissing off a local agency?
Right.
I don't get it.
Well,
I just don't get it.
We see what happens when some of these fringe companies speak out on the Second Amendment, and we know what the hunting industry does to them at that point in time. So,
but how could anybody be against questioning the CWD?
Well, that's my point. Yeah, you think if they would stand up, the hunters would back them even more.
I see people say that all the time. Well, the reason that these other, Lukowskis and Kiskis and all these others aren't saying anything is because they're going to lose sponsorships, or they're going to I don't agree with that. Yeah. And you know what? If your sponsor's going to dump you because you stand for something and you don't want to see people's heritage taken away, then find another sponsor.
Right? Exactly. That's yes, exactly.
I don't get it. It just if you guys want to call it the names, I mean, I'll agree with you, but I just know that it's my place to,
right.
just because.
Okay, here we go. Stand by in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back, third segment of the show. Still sitting here in the warm cabin talking CWD.
You know what? We've had 2 segments with Jay on. Jay, where can people go to find more about you and what you're all doing?
We would love to have them on our webpage. It's just The Wild Outdoors. Just go there and like us and follow us. And we post a lot of stuff. We post a lot of videos and stuff every day. And our YouTube channel is The Wild Outdoors, and we post there's hundreds of hours of video and stuff on there. So those are 2 great places. You can follow my personal Facebook, which is just Jay Gregory. Unfortunately, they only let you have so many friends, so I can't friend everybody that comes on there, but you can certainly follow, and we'd love to have you. So,
right.
And you know what? How long have you been doing this?
This will be our 28th year. I'm getting old.
We all are. Father Time's not kind to us.
I don't mind being so outspoken. I'm kind of turning into that guy that I talked about when I was younger. That was like, that old grumpy guy seems like he has an opinion about everything. Well, I guess I'm turning into that guy. But I try not to too much, and maybe I do voice my opinion too much. But when I feel as strongly as I do about something like this, I just, if I offend some people, I'm not intending to offend, but if it offends you, I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel about it. So.
Okay. So while we're there, let's go to the Jay Gregory of old. Let's go way back a little bit. And who got you started in this passion? What started this all for you?
Probably my grandpa. I never really had any big hunters in my family, which is odd, looking back on it. My grandpa used to take me fishing, and it started with a BB gun, and then with a .22 and squirrel hunting. And then when we lived in Colorado and we moved to Missouri, I literally grew up in a town, population 253. I lived on a farm, and I mean, it was just kind of a way of life. I just loved it. And then the whole archery thing, that just bit me at a really young age, and I just had no desire to gun hunt after that. I just wanted to do everything with a bow, and then as life goes on, I had an opportunity. I met Mark Drury. I started doing some filming on some of their turkey videos, and then went to a deer video. And then a local ABC affiliate was looking for a TV show host, and I bluffed them into telling them I could do it. And then the next year, the Outdoor Channel came to be, and we sent in a pilot show, and then, here we are today, 28 years later, still doing it. So I've been very fortunate. And in some ways, this industry has been very good to me, and I've had so much support and so many great viewers and everything. And I'm not going to say this is my way of giving back, because I'm selfish about it too, because I want my kids and their kids to be able to deer hunt and enjoy this stuff. But, I've had so many people contact me and help me. What can you do to help? They're doing this, they're doing that with this whole CWD, and they're putting bait balls across my hand. And I feel helpless too. I mean, and I don't know what to tell these people. And so I guess that's the only reason why I've just been so vocal about it. I'm just like, well, if nothing else, I'll give everybody a platform to talk about this, and at least let's ask some questions and maybe make them accountable for what they're doing.
How do we hold them accountable? I mean, we're kind of taking you off the track about your personal side now, but you said that. What do you think we could do to make our politicians and our state game officials accountable and transparent?
It's hard, because I know that some, I think they're so powerful, but I think power is in numbers. And if enough people ask this, if enough people call their representatives, their state representatives, and email them and say, hey, here's what's happening. I can tell you this for a fact. In Pennsylvania, where it got stopped, this Jim Gregory, didn't know anything about it. He's a state rep and had no idea that any of this was going on, is what he told them. And then once he saw it, he stopped it. I mean, he literally overnight stopped it. And he said, we need to find a cure, not a cull, which was perfect. And so in that area, their representative in that area cut it off and stopped it. So that would be the only thing I'd say, is that, you know, talk to your representatives, talk to your local officials, even though they look at you and tell you you're crazy and you're not a biologist and you don't know enough. Ask the questions, make them answer the questions and make them real. I mean, to me, it's almost like asking those questions and making them answer them. If you make them answer them enough time, maybe they'll listen to themselves and realize that their answers make no sense. Not to a normal human being with a little bit of common sense. Their answers make no sense.
Well, that's a great place to start. I know here in Michigan, I don't know about other states, but here in Michigan, our legislature has a sportsman's caucus, and we've got a couple of state congressmen that are actually fighting the fight for us, or helping to fight the fight with us. So get out there and be vocal. I guess that's the one thing is we can, doing things like this, getting the information out and talking with other people in the area. But you mentioned that the congressman there in PA didn't even know about it. I work at a local TV station here in the area, and we do a weekly hunting segment. And the company that sponsors it and actually does the interviews, he hunted in the next county over, has property, and that's a CWD management area. And he didn't even understand what that meant, because that's all taken place in the last 2 years. So we've got people in the industry, like you said, that really don't even know what's going on. They don't have that information.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, but it seems like obviously a lot more people are finding out about it now because it's hitting mainstream media to an extent, and. That's the scary part, is when mainstream media starts reporting stuff that really makes no sense, and they're basically just fueling the propaganda machine, and that's not a good thing.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, we got done with our noon news, and I walked out in the studio, and they just run the story on the zombie deer, and I got everybody around, and I was like, look, okay, this is not true. What you're reporting is not true. It's not factual. And, now, well, even in the past, but especially now, I've got a little more rapport with them, because I start giving them the facts, saying this is what we're dealing with. This is how it works in Michigan. What you're putting out is propaganda for anti-hunting. A lot of it is, like you said, the zombie deer. So that's when you've got the opportunity. I think we need, all of us, I mean, not just you, not just me and Danny, but everybody who buys a hunting license and cares about their heritage needs to start speaking up and telling the truth and being vocal about it.
Absolutely. And I just, I've reached out, and I've said this before, and I've had a couple posts the last couple days, and I won't really name any names, but there's over 100 TV shows out there, and, there's some big ones, and there's some people that have millions of people following them, and have made a great living off this industry. Come on, man, join the fight, use your platform and get out there and help people. And we need everybody in on this. This isn't going to just affect a few. This is affecting everybody, and I've said this before. I suppose maybe some of these other people that maybe just don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to say anything about it. I bet whenever one of their neighbors that doesn't like them because they're jealous because they have a TV show allows a DNR to come in and put a corn pile on the other side of the fence and start shooting all their deer they've been managing for years, I bet then they'll, they might see that it could affect, everybody. And so I just wish more people would get involved there, and I wish companies would get involved. There's a lot of big companies within our industry. I don't want to call anyone out, but I mean, it's just everyone needs to get involved in this and ask questions and use the platform in order to just be vocal about it. And and if you have a different position on it than what we have right now, that's fine, but at least talk about it. It is a problem, and it's becoming a big problem.
Well, and debate. I think that's the best way to solve a problem, is debate. You've got people on opposite sides. We'll work together on how to combat the problem, because everybody's got ideas. And,
right.
And like you said, I think this hunting industry we're a giving people. We always contribute to causes, hunting, fishing, the outdoors, whatever it is. We're always giving money back. So why not take some of that, and put it into some research and start trying to find a cure for this, or trying to find out what causes it. They say it's the folded prion, but that's where the funding is going right now. I know there's a guy out east that's doing some research now on the spongiform encephalopathy, the bacterium. And, whether you agree with that or not, at least somebody's trying something different to find the reason for it. And that's what I like to see, is people breaking into different areas and trying something different.
Absolutely. Anything's better than just going in and wiping out deer. They've already proven that doesn't work. So let's stop with that and let's figure out something else. Let's sit down, have a round table, figure out, okay, where can we put all this money that's getting spent on this? How can we better spend it to find another way of figuring this problem out? Because going in and wiping out deer herds is not working, and it's not very popular. And I think the more people that find out about what's going on, what the prevalences really are, and the fact that 0.1% of deer have CWD, if it was 50% of deer have CWD, and they make it sound like it's 50% of deer have CWD, and it's going to jump over to humans, and these zombie deer are going to break in your house and shoot you with their laser eyeballs. And it's ridiculous the direction it's going. It just needs to be talked about in a factual way.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and take our last break? We come back, we'll save the rest of the time we've got, and we'll kind of wrap things up. So maybe we got some more questions here coming in, hopefully. Like I said, there's still a lot of people that are posting comments and things. They're just flying by so fast it's hard to read them all. But we're going to step outside, take our last break, and we'll be right back after this. Okay, everybody?
I tell you what, Jay, just so you know, if you decide you get tired of being in the outdoors, I think there's a few people that want you as a representative in these different states. They're asking for you to, and Matt Johnson says hi. Tim Andrews is watching, and that's it. And man, yeah, you definitely looks like you could become a representative for a few states now.
It's sad that so many states need, and there's guys. There's guys that have way bigger followings than I have that are from Wisconsin. Where's the Pat and Nicole Reed at on this?
Yeah.
Lee and Tiffany.
Can you imagine if we got everybody together and we got all of them together?
It'd be
huge.
It would be mind blowing.
It'd be huge.
It makes you wonder if maybe maybe I wasn't on the right side of the money trail on this thing or something. I don't know.
You need to work for the government agencies.
Hey, shut up! We'll pay you this for and I've never had any, and I'm sure I probably got a bullseye on my back, but I'd have to do something wrong, and for that to make a difference, and I'm not going to do anything wrong.
Right.
If I disappear, if somebody come looking for me.
If the screen goes black in the next segment.
Right. If you look up and you hear rustling in the background, we know what happened. Okay, all right, let's get to the last segment here. Here we go. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back. Good talk in the commercial breaks. You guys have got to watch the live streams. For everybody that's on the podcast, you're missing out. Talking with Jay Gregory here again out of Florida. I would kind of ask another little bit of a leading question here. Right now we're seeing a lot of the attention being paid here in the Midwest and the South Central Midwest. Like maybe even down to Arkansas. They've just come up with some cases down there. But this was primarily a Western disease when it started, and we don't hear a lot about those states being all up in arms and waving the red flag saying kill all the animals, whether it's elk, mule deer, or whitetails. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. CWD was actually found in a pen in Colorado in 1967, and then the next thing you know, they start. They find it in Wisconsin. Well, I doubt that a deer got out of that pen and ran to Wisconsin when that happened. My personal opinion is that these deer have had there's been a CWD, they've been in deer and they've been in cervids for forever, and they're just now testing for them and finding them. Why the states out there? Obviously Colorado, their elk and deer herd are as strong as they've ever been. All those western states, you would think that with it being as bad as they want you to believe it is, you'd start seeing the only place that deer numbers are down and the hunting numbers are down are in the places like Wisconsin, where they went in and just wiped them out. And they're still trying to, they're still trying to come back from that. And so I don't know. There again, that's just another question that makes kind of no sense.
Well, okay, you mentioned Wisconsin, and I heard a gentleman that hunts up in that area where they've got CWD, especially there on his private farm. And what do you say to a guy who says, we're shooting mature bucks up here, and the problem is 3 out of 5 of the deer we shoot now are CWD positive. He says, what kind of future do we have? What do you say to somebody that's on the forefront of the battle and they're discouraged? I mean, what do we say to those people, I guess?
Well, I mean, I guess my biggest question would be, okay, you're killing a deer, you're killing a buck, and if the prevalence is, whatever the prevalence is in that area, they're killing. How do you know that deer would have died of CWD before it would have died of natural causes?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's my thing is, yeah, a deer might have CWD. I would guess, I don't know this for a fact, I would guess that I've probably eaten several deer that have had CWD. As many deer as I've eaten over the years, as many deer as my family eats. And one of my farms in Missouri is right in the hot zone. So, and they just started testing. So I'm sure I've eaten CWD deer. Am I worried about it? No. So I don't know, if you're in the hot zone of Wisconsin and you've got a nice farm and you're managing it, if you can keep, as long as you can keep them from coming in and wiping you out, I just don't know that it's that big a deal to worry about. I mean, if you're not walking out the back door and see deer, all skin and bones and dying all over the place, are they really going to die of CWD just because they got it? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, there'll be some people that'll say absolutely is 100% fatal. Well, then there ought to be dead deer laying in a lot of places. I don't ever find them.
Well, it's funny you say that. You talk about finding dead deer all over the place. There's an article that just came out. Well, it's the one here in Michigan about they say there might be a potential of 40% die-off of the deer herd in the UP because of the weather this year. So now they've instituted the supplemental feeding policy. So we're worried about 40% of the deer dying off, but we're spending millions of dollars when we're getting 0.001% of CWD. I mean, it's the two wide extremes, and we're worried.
There again, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 7.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. You're worried about them dying off because of the deep snow, so you're going to open up supplemental feeding, but whenever the snow's gone, you can't feed because if you feed, it could spread CWD. It just doesn't make any sense. And if deer were, if you would think if CWD were that harsh on the deer and you had that kind of a winter, wouldn't you think, I mean, over the years, this isn't the first time we've had a harsh winter where you've had die-offs. I don't know. It just seems like Mother Nature takes care of herself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
that's the thing about it is you get the natural Mother Nature stuff that's happening already. You get this thrown on top of it, and it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, let's end the show like on a little bit happier note. I mean, we can get in the trenches on this, and actually it can kind of get you depressed, thinking of all the possible scenarios that we can go through that we're going to lose our deer, or it makes you angry. It's an emotional topic, but looking forward, just like tonight, having discussion. I think that's a first start. You mentioned talking to your local politicians. Is there anything else that you think we can do? Maybe there's a way we can form some kind of group or get behind our wildlife groups, like the NDA or Whitetails Unlimited, or even on a bigger scale. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here.
I don't know either, and I'm open for any and all suggestions as far as that goes. But it's going to take a lot of people. It's going to take it's going to take a big group. It would be great if groups like Whitetails Unlimited and and some of these bigger groups would actually, but you don't really hear a whole lot out of them, or I haven't. But maybe they're in the works of that, of forming a group to get everybody together. And I think the only thing you do right now is you have to kind of micromanage it from smaller areas. Just I think, talk to your state representatives and let them know that, you're not happy with what's going on, or at least let them know what is going on. Because in some cases, they may not even know what's going on.
Right. Well, I know here locally in Michigan, we've got a group up in the northwestern part of the Lower Peninsula called the Northwest 13. Or that area is called Northwest 13, and they've imposed APRs up there. It was a Let 'em Go, Let 'em Grow group. Lincoln Roan, a friend of ours, who kind of got that big push started, and they're pushing 30 to 40,000 members now, and they're trying to work with the DNR and the state wildlife agencies of getting APRs pushed statewide, in hopes of using that as a tool to entice hunters to shoot more does and manage the herds properly and get those prevalence rates down. I mean, if we can do something like that, maybe on a national level, and I guess, and maybe even looking at that, why isn't there the states aren't even working together? It seems like every little piece is doing their own thing, and we're not getting anywhere. There's no traction. But if we could get a group like Lincoln's on a bigger scale and push nationally, I think.
Well, it makes exactly what you said. I'll use Kansas and Missouri as an example. There's a magic line, which is a state line between the two, and they couldn't be any more opposite. In Kansas, you can feed, you can put out minerals. I dare to say Kansas has way better deer hunting than Missouri has from a quality standpoint. Missouri probably has more deer, but because of their management practices of having gun season during the rut, they're never going to have the age structure that a state like Kansas or Iowa is going to have, where they have the gun season the first week of December. Mm-hmm. So you take this magic line, and those people over there in Kansas, unless something has changed or is going to change, they aren't talking about CWD. They aren't implementing any of these deals, and their deer are just fine. Mm-hmm. Yet over in Missouri, I think the number's 30,000. They've killed 30,000 deer in Missouri, and that's all they want to talk about. No baiting, no feed. You can't even put a salt lick out. So I'm like you. Who's right? Who's wrong? Are the people in Kansas that is apparently the Missouri Department of Conservation must think that the Kansas Parks and Wildlife are a bunch of idiots if they think that, well, they're going to become a problem because their deer are going to, on the line, are going to give our deer CWD. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's weird that it's not a nationwide, it's by state, and everyone is so different. The difference between South Dakota and Nebraska and some of the other states that touch, and now Montana's getting into the game. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know how you get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, that one's always buffaloed me as to why people aren't working together instead of opposing each other.
The worst part about the same page deal is like when you got Indiana talking about doing the same thing that Michigan has done that's been quote unquote so successful when it hasn't been successful at all.
Right.
So that blows my mind. That takes me back to the theory of there must be a blueprint where you get, somebody's paying for this.
Right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are.
Indirectly, whether it's coming from the federal government or on the state and local level, it's coming out of our pocket. But all right. I said I was going to try to turn this into a positive ending here. So, looking ahead,
spring and it's turkey season coming up. It's positive, and it's 85 degrees out here where I'm at. That's positive. So
I don't want to hear about 85, man. It's maybe 35 here right now, but no, that's awesome. We talked before the show. You're going to do some turkey hunting down there. What's on the horizon for you for deer season this year? Speaking of deer, and we're talking about hunting.
Well, just the same old. Of course, we'll put in for tags for elk out in Wyoming and Montana. We'll see, what happens there. Our fall kind of sets up on what tags we get lucky enough to draw. So, but even if we don't draw any tags, we'll be in Wyoming for whitetails. We'll be in Iowa and Missouri for whitetails. And then I have a staff that's been with me for a long time. It's not a huge staff, but I have a very good staff, and they're from, different states, Illinois, Minnesota, Kansas. So, meat and potatoes of our show is the whitetails in the Midwest. And so we'll be looking forward to that as summer moves on. It'll be time to plant food plots and get the cameras out and going. And as soon as turkey season's over with, we'll be right into that. So always looking forward to that. And, hopefully we'll have a good wet summer and the antler growth will be great and CWD will mysteriously vanish and we'll all be happy.
Wouldn't that be nice? That would be awesome.
I do have one question. You do all this hunting, you do all this turkey hunting, elk, deer, but I got to ask you, and we ask everybody that we have on the show that we talk to, what's your favorite meal? Like you're gonna make out of, and how would you cook it?
My favorite is easy. That one has got to be deer loin. And I just cut the loins. I use Lowry seasoning sauce on them, or Lowry seasoning salt. And I prefer to cook them on the grill. I put a slice of Lowry seasoning on it, put a slat of butter on it, and then put it on the grill and cook them on the grill. And I like my meat pretty rare, so it just basically melts in your mouth. But that's Skittles, my daughter, I call her Skittles, Whitley, she comes to the house and she's always like, are we going to have deer meat again? So we eat a lot of deer meat. But that's probably my favorite. I like all different types of wild meat. It just, as long as the fat gets cut off of them and doesn't get that gamey taste, that's the biggest thing about preparing the meats, just making sure you get all the fat off of it. I love elk too. Now, unfortunately, the last couple of years I haven't drawn elk tags, so I'm out of elk meat. But I love elk and I love caribou. I've had good bear loins before. It's all good. I mean, I love it all. Turkey, wild turkeys, obviously. Cut that up and cook it on the grill. It's as good as it gets too.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of all the traveling you do, 2 questions here.
Okay.
What snack do you have with you on the road, and what are you listening to on the radio?
80s hair rock. I'm a Motley Crue, Cinderella, White Snake, Guns N' Roses kind of guy for that. And snack wise, oh man, I just don't eat very good. I'll be the first one to admit. I like my snacks, so I eat. Don't eat very healthy on the road, that's for sure.
Whatever you can get that's at the local gas station on the way.
Exactly.
He's a pork rinds kind of guy.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
That's awesome. But we're kind of running up a little bit out of time here, so we're going to wrap up the podcast portion of this, and we'll stay on for just a few minutes afterwards if anybody's got any quick questions. But thanks again for spending an hour with us tonight and talking about something that's very dear and important to us and you as well, and a lot of people out there. And once again, give everybody a quick shout to where they can find all of your information at and where they can see some of your work.
Just come to the Wild Outdoors Facebook page, like us and follow us there, or you can go to, if you want to see a bunch of our shows and videos and old stuff, new stuff, go to our YouTube channel. It's free. Just subscribe to it. And other than that, we will start airing again on the Sportsman's Channel July 1st. And come say hi on the Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Well, for some reason we just lost the video, but we still got the audio portion. So we're just going to pop our screen up here. But we're going to wrap up the podcast portion of it, folks. Y'all take care, and make sure you get over on Wednesday afternoons or Wednesday evening and check out the YouTube live stream portion of this. So, there he's back on. Okay. But yeah, check that out. Danny will have that posted for you, and you can hear all the conversations in between the commercial breaks and all the good stuff. So y'all take care, and we'll be back again next week. And for those of you on the live stream, if you've got a question, get it out here real quick.
Because we want to let Mr. Gregory get off to his golf.
And we got to go shoot archery.
Yeah, we got to go shoot our league.
But yeah, thanks again, Jay, for spending the evening with us and talking about this. And if you ever get up to Michigan, let us know, and we'd love to sit around and talk more about hunting, fishing, the great outdoors.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's been fun.
All right. Hey, you take care, and we'll catch up with you real soon. And don't forget, we'll have the link up for the show, and you can share that as well, okay?
We'll do it. Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. That'll do it for us this week, and we'll be back again next week, 4 o'clock.